Alright, so this is going to be the bulk of the chapter where we start talking about congruent triangles. We will start adding in proofs in a little bit, but for this video we're just going to introduce congruent triangles and talk about why they're congruent and what they are. So we've already seen the definition of congruent, so let's talk about congruent triangles now. Two triangles are congruent if all the corresponding parts are congruent. So basically what that means is if I were to take one triangle, I should be able to place it right on top of the other and everything matches up perfectly. When we were talking about constructions, we talked about the idea that they didn't have arithmetic, so the idea of congruency showed up as, can I place one thing exactly on top of the other? Alright, so we're going to look at two congruent triangles. Look at these two on the left, ABC and RSD are two congruent triangles. The reason I know they're congruent is every little part of them are congruent. We have an angle here that's congruent to this one here, angle here congruent to this one here, angle here congruent to here, and all three sides have matching marks as well. Now, what we have to do is write a congruent statement. There is a specific order. So if I pick my first triangle to be ABC, that triangle is congruent to a specific triangle. What it has to do for a congruent statement is it has to match exactly. Angle A has one mark, angle D has one mark. So if A is first, D has to be first. B is second, it has two marks. Angle R has to be second because it has two marks. And then C and S are left over at the end. When we look over here, I'm going to pick LMN. I'm just going to go in that order. Triangle LMN is congruent to, we need to figure out which triangle matches. L has one mark, Q has one mark. M has two, so P has two. N has three, N also has three. Those two are congruent because they're vertical angles. Don't forget about vertical angles as well. So looking here, what we need to do is identify the corresponding congruent angles and sides and the congruent triangles. So what we want to do is we want to list 7 congruent statements. We want to say angle A is congruent to angle, it's got one mark, D has one mark as well. Angle, now I can't say B or C because there's multiple angles, so I have to label this one as angle ABC to be congruent to angle ABC has 2 marks. This one down here has 2 marks. I'm going to label it as DCB. You got to be very careful because we're using so many of the same letters over and over. It's easy to get mixed up what we're talking about. ACB is an angle that has 3 congruent marks. Angle DBC also has 3 congruent marks. Oops. Angle DBC. Now when we look at sides, let's start with one congruent mark. AC, that's the line above it, is congruent to BD, line above it as well. 2 marks is line segment AB, that's congruent to line segment CD, which also has 2 marks. Now BC is congruent to BC. When we're writing proofs, this one's going to show up a lot. And while we were looking at properties, this one was kind of trivial, but this one is reflexive property. As we're doing proofs, we're going to have to write this. Even though we know something's congruent to itself, we still have to write that it's congruent to itself. So let's finish with a congruency statement for the triangles. Triangle ABC is congruent to A matches with D. This angle with 2 marks matches with this angle with 2 marks. The vertex of that is C. And then B is last. And I forgot the little triangle symbol, so let's squeeze that in. So now we're not going to have a picture. We have to be able to draw our own picture. So as we're going through this, we want to be able to draw this picture. And let me get a triangle. I'm just going to copy this triangle so that it does actually look congruent. And sure, we'll move that one. So we have triangle DEF. Now, you really could name this one in any particular order, but since DEF EF is congruent to GHI, I'm going to get D and G to be in the exact same spot. I'm going to get E and H to be in the exact same spot, and then I and F. So which segment is congruent to EF? Since EF is this one on the bottom, HI is the other one on the bottom. So if you line the pictures up properly, you can orient yourself as to left, right, and bottom. Which angle is congruent to angle HIG? HIG, remember, you follow them in order. Right corner, right corner. So we're going to label this one angle EFD. And what segment is congruent to GI? GI is on the right, DF is on the right. Now let's say you didn't want to look at the picture. You wanted to do it from up here. Which segment is congruent to EF? Look at where EF are. They're the last two letters. The last two letters are HI. So you can do it from the congruency statement as well, which is why it's so important to write it in the correct order. And is FE congruent to HI? It is, because it's the same two letters. Remember, EF is the same as HI. So don't be tricked by that. All right, let's take a look at this one. We have triangle ABC, and we have triangle DEF. Let's draw a couple triangles. Oh, well, this is, no, there we go. All right, and I want to label in the same order, so I'm going to put A, B, C, and I'm going to put D, E, F. Remember the importance of going in the same order. We know AB is 3x plus 14. We know BC is 2x plus 10. AC is 2x plus 12. And DE is 5x minus 20. Let me rewrite that. 5x minus 20. So, as we're going through, I need to find x. I don't know if this is an equilateral triangle ABC, so I can't set sides of the same triangle equal, but I know that those two are congruent. Because the triangles are congruent, so their parts are congruent as well. And since I set up my picture the correct way, the left side ones are congruent. I'm going to subtract 3x to the other side. I'm going to add 20. When I divide, I get x is 17. Now, the question asks, find the perimeter of ABC. Well, the perimeter is all the sides added together. I need to plug everything in. So I'm going to take 17, plug it into each one. 2 times 17 plus 12, and 2 times 17 plus 10. We're going to get 44, 46, and 65. So when we go through this, add them all up, we get 5 carry the 1, 155. So as you're going through this, just take your time, double check that you're doing everything properly, that you're not making any silly mistakes, and really pay attention to how you order every little piece. As long as the picture is drawn properly, it's going to be much easier to set up.